Bedtime stories for adults. If, like me, some of your fondest memories are of being tucked in and hearing a favorite story as you drifted off to sleep, you'll love this channel. Here, you'll find gentle bedtime readings of my own books, narrated by my assistant May, in a soft, soothing voice designed to help you relax. No jarring sound effects, no sudden noises, just calm, feel good stories to ease you into sleep. If you enjoy these stories and would like to support the channel, you can also find all of my books available on Amazon. Chapter 18 Old Legends. Casting my lure into the water at the base of the waterfall, I sat on the big rock I've used as a favorite spot for the past 3 days. The sound of the falling, rushing water drowning out the world and providing a white noise background for my thoughts. I sat there, I guess, a little in shock, but trying to sort out my feelings for the past hour's event. Of course, I was happy for Chili. Why wouldn't I be? He was now finally free and had a beautiful lady to spend his life with. But I guess if I would be totally honest with myself, I felt a little cheated and very alone. For now, I was totally alone. The bear I've had at my side for the past 30 years or so, and the woman for whom I would give anything for, both gone from my life, both on their own paths. If they were dead, I could at least get closure. But no, both alive, both having a life without me in it. I wasn't happy with myself feeling this way. I'm not a petty or jealous person normally. But I felt the anger and hurt I was feeling was justified. After all, this was my time to enjoy life. Still young and now retired, I was starting to plan many adventures with my bear by my side and hoping, with his help, to eventually get Nimicie out of my mind. The pull on my line woke me from my trance, and I reeled in a nice sun-scale salmon. I guess he caught himself for university. I had no idea how long he had been tugging on my line. But now the river was getting dark, too dark to see a bobber, and with the smell of dinner coming from camp, I decided to pack it up for the night and head back to camp. Kylie's kindness preceded her, for I could smell the yellowtail roasting over the fire as I entered the camp. "That smells good," I complimented. "Your last 3 yellowtail, I'm making some beans and fresh coffee to go with," Kylie said as she smiled at me. "Any luck?" she asked. "Just 1 salmon. I thought I'd offer it to your bear for his help today, if that's okay with you," I asked. "I'm sure he'd love that, thank you, Sergeant," she said as she smiled. I walked over to Lil Sergeant, who was chewing on the deer head Chili was using as a ball earlier. Throwing down the fish in front of him, I said, "For your help today. Thank you." For whether Lil Sergeant knew it or not, he did help acting as a translator, or at least a conduit, so my best friend, my brother, could hear clearly my final words to him, and I his. Then I put away my fishing gear and grabbed a mug of ale and sat by the fire to wait for dinner. "I stole a piece of your stag for my dinner. It's been so long since I've had venison, I couldn't help myself," Kylie said. I laughed and looked over at the tent to see smoke coming out of it. "That's okay, Kylie. You've earned it. I see you got the deer all cut up and in the smokehouse," I said. "Yes, it was a lot easier than that bear, I'll tell you," she said as she handed me my plate of yellowtail and beans. Just then, Lyle Sergeant came over with his fish in his mouth and flopped down beside me to eat it. "Ah, he came over to eat with you, Sergeant. He's such a good bear," Kylie chuckled. "So what's the plan for tomorrow, Sergeant?" Kylie asked. Swallowing the food in my mouth, I said, "Tomorrow we pack up and go home, Kylie. My hunting here is done." Then, jokingly continued, "I guess my bear hunting here in the Pillage Lands days is done. I'll never know if I'm shooting at my niece or nephew," I said with a smile, but I guess a hint of sadness in my voice that Kylie picked up on. Kylie, hoping to cheer me up and lighten the mood, said, "Hey, you owe me an arrow. This morning, when you made me take that blindfolded target lesson, I split one of my arrows," she said. Laughing, I said, "That's a shot most archers would brag over, Kylie." "Yeah, well, I don't have the money to brag, and I don't like having an uneven amount of arrows, so you owe me an arrow," she said with her hands on her hips and a smile on her face. I pointed to my extra quiver and said, "Take your pick." As I finished my dinner and started gulping my ale, Kylie waltzed over to my quiver and carefully started inspecting my arrows, making a game of it for herself. "Oh, I like this one with the pretty bracelet tied to it," she said. Taking a hard gulp and pulling my mug away from my face, I said, "Not that one, Kylie. That's my message arrow. I need that one." "Message arrow?" she questioned. Choose another arrow, Kylie, and then come to sit beside me and I'll show you something special, I said. Lil Sergeant put his paw on my arm with my ale in it and said, Yearn? No, no ale for you. You're much too young. Water. I ordered and pointed at the river. Yearning to himself, he lumbered away. Call me an asshole all you want, Bear. You're not getting my ale, I yelled after him. As I went to take another sip of my ale, Kylie showed up beside me and held an arrow in front of my face. This one? I choose this one. It's your straightest. She said with great conviction. Chuckling, I said, They're all the same. Nope, she said. This is your straightest, and I'm taking it as punishment for my now mismatched set, she said as she put it in her quiver on her back and plopped herself down beside me. So, what did you want to show me? She asked. I pulled out my set of seeker heads and told her all about them. How my friend Captain Parker gave them to me, and where they came from, and even the scratch under Valdor's arm explaining how close they get. Oh, Sergeant, you are lucky, and they are so pretty, Kylie complimented. Well, you did the cooking, Kylie. Only fair I do dishes, cigars, and ale when I get back? I asked. Yes, please, from Kylie. I went to the river and started washing the dishes when Lil Sergeant came over and dropped a frog on a plate for me. Oh, thank you, buddy. I accept your apology, but I just ate. Go give it to Kylie, I said, evilly giggling to myself. He took his frog and ran off for the camp. As I re-washed the dish, I heard a scream from the camp and openly laughed. Heading back into camp with an armful of dishes, I asked, What was the scream? Are you okay? With a straight face as I put away the dishes. Don't even try, Sergeant. I heard you laugh from here. You put him up to it. Did you know that little pervert dropped that slimy thing down my top? Was that your doing? She asked angrily. No, but it's a nice touch, I said, laughing. That, Sergeant, is going to cost you a cigar. She smiled and sat by the fire. Good idea, I said. And pass us your mug. Then poured 2 ales and grabbed 2 cigars and joined Kylie by the fire. Giving her a mug of ale and a cigar and sitting down beside her before I could light mine, Kylie dropped a pretty woven bracelet in my lap made out of her hair. What's this? I asked. In case you ever want to send me a message, she said with a smile. That's very kind, Kylie, and pretty. I'll be sure and tie it to my arrow, I assured. I said as I leaned forward to light my cigar. I felt a tug, then a swipe up the back of my skull, and about a 4-inch strip of my hair was missing off the back of my skull. Hey, what was that for? I asked, feeling the strip of skin up the middle of my head. With my skinning knife still in her hand, she said, I will need something to send your arrow back to you. It's a little short, but I'll weave it together. Yup, this will work, she said with a smile, looking to get a reaction from me. I reached up, grabbed back my skinning knife, and lit my cigar without a word. 2 ales into the night and our cigars half done, Kylie asked me if I'd tell her a few stories about Chile. So I did. I told her some scary ones and a few heroic ones, saving the funny ones till the end of the night. Starting with my mother's conflict with Chile, and how she ended up feeding him hot peppers and locking him in the barn. Then finally what I overheard between Chile and her father while I joined them for fishing the day before. And with just enough ale left in the keg for breakfast, we decided to call it a night and go to bed. I stretched out a few feet from the fire and started to go to sleep when Kylie pulled up behind me and threw her blanket over me, and Lil Sergeant jumped on top of the blanket, scrunching his butt into my middle, pinning me in. We're not letting you sleep alone tonight, Sergeant. I'll be Chili, and Lil Sergeant will be me, she said. Then kissed the back of my neck, and we all went to sleep. I awoke the next morning, and Kylie and Lil Sergeant were gone, but just for the blanket was still very warm. I threw off the blanket and hung it over the clothesline Kylie had made our first day here. I then grabbed my mug and headed to the keg for breakfast, when I had a second thought. Feeling very warm and sweaty from that thick blanket, and knowing we were returning to the nice clean Floggin' Inn today, I thought a nice cold shower would be refreshing. I looked over to the falls to make sure Kylie didn't have the same idea, and with it not occupied, I put down my mug next to the keg, grabbed my bow and quiver off the ground, and was on my way. When I came back from my shower, with my bow and arrows on my back, my boots under my arm, and my bunched up dirty cloths held with both hands in front of my middle, Kylie was knelt by the fire making breakfast. You should have brought your shaving kit, Sergeant. I don't like your red beard, Kylie said disapprovingly. Nor do I, Kylie, I said as I ducked behind the tent to get changed. Why do you have dark brown hair and mustache and a red beard anyway? Kylie asked with a giggle. Me, Mum. I'm a half-dwarf, Kylie, I yelled, hopping into my pants. Oh, so that thing you said when I got my bear. That was dwarven? Kylie asked. Yup, I said, tucking my shirt in and pulling on my boots. Amusing herself, Kylie asked, Say something with a dwarven accent for me. Coming out from behind the tent and hanging up my dirty clothes to air, I said, Aye, lass, and what wouldn't ya have me sayin'? Then smiled at her. She laughed, saying, That's very good, Sergeant. It should be. I grew up hearing it every day of my life, I said as I poured my ale and sat beside Kylie. Jokingly, I looked at Kylie and asked, Would you like to hear my mom? She smiled at me and nodded eagerly. In my highest voice and wobbling my head back and forth, I did my impression. Ear new. Get out of me blackberries and go find yourself some work to do before you feel the toe of me boot. We both laughed. And your father was human? Kylie asked. Yes, and a captain in the King's Guard. He fell in battle when I was 15. Oh, I'm so sorry, Sergeant, Kylie said, and put her hand on my arm. Don't be. We had 15 good years together. Taught me to fish and hunt. Taught me to be a man. It was at his funeral at the palace. I saw how his fellow guards respected him and paid great homage to him, and watched the old king himself undo his uniform and press the king's seal into his shoulder, then do it back up and close the coffin. Then the entire palace echoed with the oath of the King's Guard, as every single one of them recited it in perfect unison. I would join the King's Guard the very next day, I said as I smiled at Kylie. Oh, I hope I get in, Sergeant, Kylie said. I hope you do too, Kylie. I hope you do too, I said as I smiled and looked at her with pride. Gulping down my ale, I said, Well, we're burning daylight. Time to bug out, and got up and started packing. Kylie got up with her breakfast of fish and leftover beans and looked at Lil Sergeant, who was patiently waiting by the fire. Pointing to the river, she said to him, Go hunt, but be quick about it, and don't you dare bring back any frogs. Then, with her breakfast in her hand, she tried to pull down her blanket. Kylie, sit and eat, then do the breakfast dishes, then come back and help me pack, I ordered. By the way, where did you guys go this morning? I asked. Kylie, with her mouth full, pointed at a stack of skins by the tree with her spoon. Everything but the deer is done. I left it on the rack to stretch, she said with a mouth full of food. I walked over to the skins to inspect them. Oh, Kylie, this bear skin is beautiful. Nice work. And the foxes are good as well. 3 foxtails? I asked, confused. I took it off Lil Sergeant's while he was eating it. Unlike some bears we know, Lil Sergeant chews his food, she said as she shoveled in the last of her breakfast into her mouth. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of what she just said and the way she said it. I had most of my personal stuff packed and tied to my battle bear when Kylie came back to camp with the clean dishes and her mother's cast iron pan. Have you seen my map? I asked Kylie. No, I haven't seen it since the other day you had it out planning where you were going to put that blind we never built, she said as she tied the pan to her horse. Is it missing? She asked. Yeah, normally I wouldn't care, but I did promise it to your father when we were done with it, I said, scratching my head. I'll go look by the cleaning tree and grab our rope while I'm there, I said as I left to let Kylie finish packing. Having no luck in finding my map, I grabbed the rope off the cleaning tree, then circled back by the tanning racks to look there and grab the deer skin. Then back to camp. Spying Kylie almost finished with packing up the camp, I said, No luck with the map. I grabbed the deer skin. Still needs work, but it'll be okay to travel for a few hours. Oh, and your foxes on the tree have been picked clean. Should have made a fire, I scolded. No, I did that last night, Kylie said and continued. I'm going to salt and dry the meat into training strips for Lil Sergeant, she said, tying the last of the camp to her mount with only the skins, meat, and tent remaining. Good idea, Kylie, but be sure to, I started to say. Put them down in front of him and not feed him from my hand. I know, Sergeant, she interrupted. I nodded. And not too many a day. You still want him to hunt for his meals. Always, well, until he's an old trained bear like my Chili, I added. As I stacked the skin's fur down on the ground first, the bear, Then in the center of that, the foxtails. Then covering them with the deer skin. Then the two fox skins fur down. There, that will make a perfect protective wrap for our not quite smoked enough meat. We'll just throw it all in the center of the skins and roll it all up and tie both ends, a huge meat-filled bear rug, tied to the back of my battle bear. It'll feel good to put back to bear fur again, I said and smiled. And I suppose I get the sticky, smelly, sweaty tent at my back? Kylie said with her hands on her hips. Laughing, I said, You are the hired help. As we stacked and rolled the meat and tied it to my battle bear, then took down the tent and tied that to Kylie's horse, Kylie asked. What do you think happened to the other bear you said was with Setai when you saw them by the cave? Oh, she either killed him or ran him off when she came for Chili. She had a honeymoon on her mind. No stepkids allowed, I said as I chuckled. I took one last look around to make sure we were leaving Mother Nature's house as close to the way we found it as we could, and, except for 3 fire pits, 2 tanning racks, and half a cord of firewood some hunter will appreciate, I think we did a good job. Oh, Kylie, your split arrow in the tree. Don't you want the head? I asked. She answered as she mounted her horse. No, I thought about what you said about bragging about the shot, so I left it there with my name carved in the tree under the shot. I smiled and nodded, then cupped my hands over my mouth and yelled, Goodbye, Chili. Kylie did the same. Goodbye, Chili. We love you. Then Kylie pointed to beside her horse and said, Lil Sergeant, heel. Lil Sergeant came around to the side of her horse, and I started to say, as I mounted my bear, That's not a good. Just then, Lil Sergeant took a swipe at the front leg of Kylie's horse, sending Kylie flying over the horse's head and landing on her bum on the ground with a thud. Looking up at me, she said, You were saying, Sergeant? Holding in a laugh but grinning ear to ear, I said, I was saying, that's probably not a good idea since bears are very jealous creatures. You may want to have him out in front of you. Kylie nodded, got up off her bum, dusted herself off, and went in front of her horse and ordered, Lil Sergeant, left guard. He went to his position. Kylie checked to see everything was still tied on and tight and mounted her horse again. And we were off home. Ha, Section 12. You realize, Kylie, if that was a real horse, that swipe would have broken its leg, and you'd have to put it down. I giggled. Then you'd be in a fix. And smiled. I know, Sergeant. Now, if you don't mind, can we ride the rest of the way in silence? I can feel the left side of my ass swelling as we speak, she said, growing in pain from her lesson. Arriving at the inn, Kylie slowly dismounted, wincing in pain. I sat atop my battle bear, chuckling as I had been doing the entire trip. Okay, Lil Sergeant, this is your home now. And before she could finish, Lil Sergeant went running into the inn. From inside the inn, you could hear Floggin' Bear, Martha, get my gun, and Kylie hobbling in as fast as she could into the inn yelling, No, Daddy, don't shoot him! I laughed so hard I almost fell off my bear. All 4 of them coming back out onto the front porch, Kylie trying to carry her very heavy bear, had him up on his back paws with her arms around him, under his front paws, and across his chest and her back to her father, who had a shotgun, and Martha pulling up the rear with her hands on her hips. Trying very hard to stay on my battle bear, I did my best to compose myself, for I had the best seat in the house and didn't want to miss any of this. Kylie dropped her bear on the porch and quickly wrapped herself around him. Daddy, please don't shoot him. He's my animal companion. Daddy, he talks to me, Dee. Daddy, please. He'll stay outside. Please, Daddy, Kylie begged. Floggin put the gun under his arm and threw his hands in the air, turned, and marched back inside. To which I let out a loud, Ha! Then quickly covered my mouth with my hands to shut myself up and watch the rest of the show. Kylie sat on the step and still kept her arms wrapped around Lil Sergeant's head. Please, Mom. Sergeant killed his mama, and I've been training him all week. He talks to me, Mom. I understand him, Kylie begged. Martha, with her arms crossed in front of her, looked at Kylie, then looked at me. I sat up straight and put my hands on my saddle in front of me and tried to look as innocent as I could, but grinning from ear to ear. Section 14. Turned back to Kylie and said, Move. Kylie stepped away from her bear, and Martha came down the stairs grumbling to herself, grabbed Lil Sergeant's chin and looked deep into his eyes, then did the same checkup she did on Chili, as Lil Sergeant kept trying to lick her nose. Both Kylie and I snickered as she looked over the bear. You keep him outside and build a bed for him in the shed, and he hunts his own food. I won't be feeding him, Martha said as she turned to Kylie. Yes, Mom. Oh, thank you, Mom, Kylie said with a huge smile on her face. Martha came over to me with her arms crossed and said, What are you laughing at? How come you didn't kill it when you killed its mama? She chastised. Well, at first we couldn't find him for a few days, then when we did, Kylie pulled the same act on me that she did on the two of you, I said, trying to justify myself. Well, it's good to see you and your soft heart again. Sergeant, get down and washed up. It's almost lunch, Martha said. Oh, thank you, Martha. But I've got about 120 pounds of venison and smoked fish to go in your smokehouse first, I said, tapping the bearskin behind me. The smokehouse is full to the rafters. No, it'll have to go into the kitchen. Looks like I've got the rest of the day planned for me, Martha said. Right, I said, and dismounted and started to untie the bearskin from my mount. Ha! Section 15. There's my frying pan, Martha said angrily. Kylie was bent over her bear, scratching him, as Martha untied her pan from Kylie's horse, marched up behind her, and hard as she could smack Kylie's ass with the back of the frying pan. Kylie flew over her bear and landed again in the dirt on her back with a thud. You ask before you take, Martha said to Kylie, waving the pan at her, and stormed into the inn. Holding on to my battle bear to keep from falling in the dirt myself, I let out a huge laugh and managed to get out. I hope she got the other cheek? Continued laughing. She did, Kylie said as Lil Sergeant ran over to lick her face. I laughed even harder, then put the skin with the meat across my back and headed into the inn. Getting about halfway to the kitchen, Martha came out the kitchen door. Freeze. Hold it right there, Sergeant. I'll take that, Martha said. Martha, I got over 120 pounds of meat here, plus the skins, I advised. Thought I forgot about you and your little joke, huh? Martha asked as she hoisted the meat off me and threw it over one arm like a sack of potatoes. No, it will be a while till you see the inside of my kitchen again, Sergeant. Wait right there, I'll bring out your skins, she said with her back to me as she entered her kitchen. That is a strong woman, poor Floggin, I thought to myself. Just then, Floggin entered the room with a huge frame with my map inside of it and proceeded to hang it on his wall by the fireplace in the main hall. That's my map, I said out loud, pointing at Floggin. Floggin looked at me, dropped his pipe out of his mouth, and said, Is the hunt over? Yeah, I said. Then, my map, Sergeant, and proceeded to hang it on his wall. Okay, but where did you find it? I asked. Oh, I procured it the other day before I left. Since you knew where you were, and Kylie knows her way home, I figured you didn't need it, he said while straightening the frame. Well, you might have told somebody. I spent all morning looking for that thing, I said, a little annoyed. No need, Sergeant. It's right here and looking very good, Floggin said, complimenting himself. That is a beautiful frame. Carved that yourself, Floggin? I asked. I did, and the plaque under it as well, he said, lighting his pipe. The King's Guards hunt. I read aloud. Guards, Floggin, as in plural? I asked. I have every confidence in my little girl, Sergeant, thanks to you and your little speech, he said as he looked at me and nodded to say thank you. That is a beautiful piece, Floggin. Speaks well of your inn and the man who runs it. I have to go wash up for lunch. I'll see you there, I said. And just as I was about to leave, Martha came out of the kitchen. Your skins, Sergeant, she said. I walked over to her and said, Thank you, Martha, but they're not all mine, the deer and the foxtails, I said as I took them. The rest are Kylie's to do whatever she wants with. I turned to run out of the inn. Your bear pelt is finished, Sergeant. I just left it on the rack for your approval, Floggin yelled at me on my way out. Thank you, Floggin, I yelled back. I heard as I exited the inn. This bear pelt alone has to be worth at least 400 gold, Martha said to Floggin in astonishment. It felt good to brighten their lives a bit. They're good people and deserve a break after the hard times they've been through, I thought to myself as I jogged around back to the stables, spying Kylie and Lil Sergeant trying to pull the plow out of the shed. Kylie! I yelled and ran over to her. You're going to kill yourself. This is a heavy, unforgiving piece of farm equipment, and you don't try to move it yourself? Got that, I said angrily, as we pulled it out of the shed together. Now, Lil Sergeant can sleep in Chili's bed for tonight. Here, take this deerskin and go stretch it on the rack, then wash up and I'll meet you at lunch. I said, Okay, Sergeant, she replied, and I ran off for the stables, but looking back said, And don't touch that plow again! And she threw me a salute and ran off for the tanning rack. I was sitting at the lunch table chatting with Floggin when Kylie flew in and scooted herself into the back bench at the table. Martha came out of the kitchen with a huge pot of bear stew and some homemade individual loaves of bread. A home-cooked meal, Sergeant, Kylie said with a smile. I smiled back and raised my eyebrows in agreement. What are you going to do with those beautiful pelts of yours, Kylie? Martha asked while serving. Oh, you can have it. Mom, you're the sewer, Kylie said. Kylie, your mother and I could sell it just as it is and make a lot of gold for the inn, said Floggin. I gave it to Mom, Daddy. Sorry, but it's her call, Kylie said, digging into her stew. We'll sell it, Mr. Floggin. And what of the fox pelts, Kylie? Martha asked. Fox pelts, they belong to the sergeant, Kylie said, confused. Swallowing fast and holding my napkin in front of my mouth so as not to be crude, I said, I only need the tails. Kylie, the skins are yours. Perhaps your mom can make 3 nice pairs of mittens out of them for all of you for winter, I said. Then dropping my napkin and smiling at Floggin said, Of course, fox skin mittens are more of a lady's thing, but I'm sure you can pull it off, Floggin, smiling. You spend a winter up here, Sergeant. Then you can judge people's attire, Floggin responded as he took another spoonful of stew. Well, I and Chili spent 3 months in the Northlands hunting mammoths 3 years ago, and neither of us had foxskin mittens, I stated. Stop it, the two of you. Not at my table, and not during a meal, Martha warned. But foxskin mittens it is, and I'm sure I can get 4 pairs out of those nice fat pelts. Thank you for the idea, Sergeant, Martha said. Oh, I couldn't, Martha, thank you, I said while eating. What, a Kingsguard refusing a lady's gift? Floggin chastised. Martha banged her spoon on the table, indicating that she has warned us. Sorry, Martha, I said. Sorry, honey. From Floggin, and we quietly ate while Kylie giggled at the two of us. Speaking of Chili, where is your pushy bear? Floggin asked. Kylie chimed out singing. Chili found a girlfriend. Kylie, oh, I'm so sorry, Sergeant, Martha said. No, it's okay, Martha. She's the biggest, most beautiful, black mountain grizzly I have ever seen. In a few years, the Plague Lands will have the biggest, well-trained, meanest bears on Azeroth. Brave hunters will return to try their hand at bagging one of Chili's offspring, I said, then told my joke. Of course, my bear hunting days are finished here. I'll never know if I'm shooting at a niece or nephew, I said, smiling. Well, you joke all you want, Sergeant. I know losing Chili must be hard on you, Martha said. We better sell that pelt quick while people still think it's a big one, Floggin joked. With my mouth full, I smiled and pointed at Floggin to say, Good one. So any plans, Sergeant? Floggin asked. Well, Kylie mentioned you have an old plow, and Kylie and I were wondering if Martha would like a nice-sized garden, something big enough to fill a root cellar and do some pickling year-round. With your well and pump out there, I was thinking a few irrigation ditches and a nice fence. You got tons of trees here, even without Chili. Me and Kylie should be able to bang out a nice field garden in about 3 days or so, I said, wiping my bowl with my bread. Oh, I couldn't ask you to do that, Sergeant, Martha said as she grabbed my bowl and refilled it with stew and was sure to dig out big pieces of meat for my bowl. And with the plow out of the shed, I can have it for Lil Sergeant, Kylie spouted. Ah, we have the truth, Floggin chucked. But still, Sergeant, it's a great idea. Martha's been after me for years to build her a garden, Floggin said as he stuffed his pipe. More bread, Sergeant. How about a mug of ale? Martha asked. Just coffee would be fine, Martha dear, Floggin interrupted. And there's a nice patch of straight birch trees at the east corner of our property, of course. The patch extends out onto Crown land, but I'm sure His Majesty wouldn't mind us borrowing a few trees, Floggin said. Is there any clay around here, Floggin? I asked. A whole bog full just down the stream a bit. What are you thinking, Sergeant? Floggin asked, puffing on his pipe. I'll show you after lunch. Do you have some paper and a pen? I asked. Floggin nodded. Of course, this all hinges on whether or not Martha wants a new garden, do you, Martha? I asked. Martha looked around the table as if she was going to bust. I was smiling at her and nodding. Kylie was smiling at her and nodding. And Floggin was playing it cool. The Paras leaned back in his chair, puffing on his pipe. Yes, please, Martha blurted out, and we all laughed. Good. Then we'll reconvene here in 2 hours after lunch. I have the stuff to put away and want to shave off this beard, I said, with both ladies in agreement that I needed to lose the beard. Then, after the garden, we'll talk about rebuilding a new smokehouse, bigger and closer to the inn. Everyone loves the smell of smoked meat. Besides, if I'm going to be here a while, I'm going to need some room for my kills, I said, and dug into my second bowl of stew. After lunch, I unpacked my battle bear and repacked my footlocker, then took the tent off Kylie's mount and set it up in the backyard to air out. Kylie took Lil Sergeant down to the stream to show him where to fish and find berries and frogs. After the tent was all set up, I went inside the stables to shave. I fired up the wood stove and set a pot of water on top to get hot when I noticed a fresh keg of dwarven ale at my desk and a clean mug. So I indulged and poured myself one while I waited for the hot water to shave with. With my ale finished and a bucket of nice hot water to shave with as I got lathered up, of course a knock at the door. "Come in," I yelled. Martha came in and came over to me. "You know, Sergeant, now with Chili gone, we'd be more than happy to set you up with a nice room in the inn," she said. "I kind of like it here. Comfortable, lots of air, and can come and go looking like a stuffed pig if I choose." I looked at her and smiled. "But thank you, and we'll revisit that generous offer when the snow comes if that's okay." I chuckled. "Of course, Sergeant. I came in here to thank you for all you do around here, and to confess something," she said as she sat on my bed. "Oh, and what's that?" I said, smiling. "The night I gave Chili his bath, I came to you to tell you something about Chili, but you stopped me, and I let you. I've felt bad for not telling you ever since," she said with her voice cracking. She needed my full attention, so I toweled off my face, poured us 2 ales, and sat and listened to her. "Chili is old, very old. He probably only has a few years left. I came in here that night to ask you to let him go. Let him return to the wild, and perhaps have some cubs while there's still time. But I didn't do it for Chili or for you. I was doing it only thinking of the prosperity of this inn. I thought with bears that big, the hunters would come back, and we might be in the black again. I feel I've betrayed you and Chili, and now with him gone." She took a deep breath and held back the tears. "I feel it's my fault you may never see your bear again," she said as she held her apron to her face to hide the tears. I put my hand on her shoulder and said, "Martha, dear lady, you have become a second mother to me in my heart, and it pains me to see you like this. Nothing is your fault. Chili and I had a wonderful life together. Over 30 years he was at my side. I knew he was old. I didn't know he only has a few years left. If I had of, I would have let him go years ago, way before either of us even knew you," I said, and took my hand off her shoulder and offered her a clean hanky from my drawer. "You are a wonderful woman. You took us into your home. Let me run rickshaw over your family. And even if you did come in here with selfish reasons, you were looking out for your family. I could never find fault with that," I said, and I looked her in the eyes and smiled. "So now use the hanky and tell me what you plan to plant in your garden while I get rid of the rest of this scruff on my face." I went to get up and then sat right back down. "Oh, Martha, I'm glad you're here, just between us. Do you know of any stories or legends of a white bear and a curse?" "Not in human legends, no, but there's an old dwarf legend about a bear named Mangleclaw," she said, drying her eyes. "Would you tell it to me, please?" I asked. Then she began. "About 300 years ago, a huge white polar bear in the mountains of Dunmorog came back to his cave with a kill for his sow and 3 cubs. Finding his sow and cubs missing and nothing but their blood and entrails and the smell of dwarfs all over the cave, the bear went mad with rage and pain for the loss of his family. He followed the smell and trail to a mid-sized dwarven village, and there he waited for dark. As soon as the last light in the last house went out, he started his killing spree, killing every man, woman, and child in the village, tearing them to bloody shrave one, a baby. And after leaving his blood-soaked claw marks in every door, he slowly dragged a dead man and the live baby back to his cave, leaving a clear blood trail in the snow, and left them both at the entrance and waited. It wasn't long till the baby's cries could be heard echoing through the mountains for miles. One raiding party came and he killed them all. Then another and he killed them too. They came shooting him and hitting him with hundreds of arrows, but he just wouldn't die. Some even said he was protected by the gods. Wave after wave of dwarfs came maddened by that baby's cry, only to meet their end in the claws and teeth of Mangleclaw. Eventually, the baby died, and fewer dwarfs came to meet their end. Till one brave raiding party of 5 dwarves, one of whom was a great healer and white magic user. Standing at the back of the party, he cast spell after spell to heal his men, till there were no more men to heal. Backing away slowly, the great healer, now out of magic, begged the huge bear for his life and swore he'd never return, but Mangleclaw did not listen, and with one swipe of his paw, cut the healer in half. As the great healer lay bleeding and cut in two, and as he died, he summoned all his magic, not to heal himself, but cursed the bear to live forever and never sleep again, only to spend each night lying awake with thoughts of every dwarf he ever killed haunting his memory forever. She took a sip of her ale, then continued, "Being that the healer was indeed a kind man, he added this to his curse, that if any dwarf should ever show kindness to Mangleclaw, the curse would be broken." She finished and then said, as she put her ale on my desk, "Now, this is just a guess, Sergeant, and a guess that would never leave this room, but I would say a young Kingsguard came across a large polar bear who was very willing and eager to die, and would put up just enough of a fight to get that Kingsguard to kill him. But instead of killing the polar bear, even though he could have, showed mercy on him and nursed his wounds, stitched up his holes, and pulled hundreds of rusted old arrowheads from his thick hide, then again stitched up every hole, if maybe even sat with him and built a fire and shared his food and water with the bear," she said and continued. "And if this young Kingsguard said half dwarf and could grow a red beard in less than a week, though he looked human, he would be able to break such a curse and have a very grateful, very loyal polar bear who may like to sleep a lot, now that he could, as a friend," she said as she looked me in the eye. "But that's just a silly guess on how a silly tale would end," she said as she smiled. 300 years ago? I asked. "Oh, even longer. That tale was told to me as a girl, and I'm not going to say how old I am," she said as she reached for her mug and sipped her ale. "So if the soldier broke the curse, the bear would return to whatever age he was when it all began?" I asked. "Yes, I would assume, and age normally from then on." She sipped her ale. "And since bears only live to be between 40 and 45 years, I would assume if this happened, say 30-some years ago, that bear would be very old indeed," she said as she gulped down the rest of her ale. "But that's just a guess, Sergeant, a guess to a silly legend," she said. "A very, very good guess, Martha. Thank you for telling me that legend," I said and returned my hand to her shoulder. I shook my head in disbelief and said out loud, 300 years ago. "Can you see, Sergeant, how a bear like that would feel he owed his last breath to his friend?" Martha asked. "Yeah, but he's paid his debt 1,000 times over with all the lives he's saved of every race," I said. "Then maybe that bear would feel that every life he saved would erase every life he took," Martha said as she stood. "Well, I've got a ton of cooking to do, and you have a garden planning meeting to get to soon," she reminded me as she left. "And thank you, Sergeant. I feel much better," she said, then closed the door behind her. As I finished shaving, I couldn't help but think of Chili and the horrors he must have gone through with that curse. I thought back on the day we met and the battle we had. He must have thought a human could kill him and end his suffering. How could he have known I was half dwarf? Then wondering if it was real love we shared or just a debt owed, but with all the good times and pranks. And how happy he looked when we'd go fishing or hunting or at the end of a battle. 300 years was a long time. A lot of hatred or a lot of forgiveness can grow in that time. But with Chili's and Mom's relationship, I would expect the latter. I felt better about losing my friend and a bit guilty that I hadn't have let him go sooner. But if I did, he never would have met Setai. The way he looked at her, and the sadness he showed to me when he thought he couldn't go with her. Chili has found his Nimicie, and hopefully, someday I will too. Chapter 19. Garden Therapy. I went around to the front of the inn to go in for the meeting, and there was Lil Sergeant basking in the sun, sleeping by the front door. I scratched his belly as I ran up the stairs to go in. Everyone was at the dining table. Floggin had his fancy navigator's kit on the corner of the table, and a map clipped to it. I took a glance at the map on the wall and thought how good it looked with its fancy frame and plaque, and the perfect spot for it too. Walking up to the table, I said, "You have a 90-pound bear with 4-inch claws sleeping at your front door. That can't be good for business." And I smiled. "Kylie, go get your bear off the front porch. Hurry now," Martha ordered. "You can put him in Chili's bed. The potbelly stove is still on. It'll be nice and warm for him," I said, and Kylie nodded and was off. "Martha, you may want to make him a collar so people know he's friendly and you're not being attacked by wild bears," I said as I chuckled. With Kylie gone and Martha trying to look busy around the inn and doing her very best not to look excited, Floggin and I planned out the garden. He had his property map on the table and a thin sheet of rice paper over it that we could draw on to plan out the irrigation and size of the garden. It was determined that the garden would be 50 yards north-south and 100 yards east-west, and fit perfectly in that rectangle between the pump and the hill, the stables, and the grove of poplar trees. We would use clay, molded and baked into half-circle shapes to line the outside edge of the irrigation ditch around the garden, keeping the water seeping in the direction of the garden and not under the fence posts. In the morning, Floggin would take his pelt to town and try to sell it and rent an agar for a few days, basically a giant corkscrew used for digging fence post holes, and get everything on Martha's list for the inn. And I insisted he take a gold coin from me and try to find me another box of cigars. While we were busy planning, Martha came to the table with a rum for Floggin, an ale for me, and a huge platter of venison sausages and mustard to dip. "Mind you, eat the sausages," Martha ordered. And when Floggin tried to say he wasn't hungry, she took a raging flip. "Mr. Floggin, you will eat those sausages and anything else I put in front of you. I've got a smokehouse full of bear and still a good 80 pounds of venison going bad as we speak. I've never had to deal with this much meat in this house, so you will eat your fill and then some. Have I made myself clear?" She ranted. "And that goes for you too, Sergeant," she said, her face flushed with anger. "Martha, don't you have neighbors?" I asked. "With a lucky streak this good, I should think it would appease the hunting gods if we would share our fortune," I said gingerly so as not to make her angrier. "The church?" Martha yelled. "I'll take 4 or 5 bear roasts to Father McMaster's. He can give them out where needed, and I'll put the rest of the venison in the smokehouse," she said with a smile on her face. "Oh, thank you, Sergeant," she said happily. "Mr. Floggin, might I borrow your horse for the afternoon?" Martha asked. "Oh, please, Martha. Take my battle bear. A much more comfortable ride. Here, I'll go tie 5 nice smoked roasts to him right now for you and bring him around front," I offered. "Thank you, Sergeant. Yes, and please, imagine me riding up to the church on a battle bear. Can you imagine what the neighbors will say, Mr. Floggin?" she said excitedly. Floggin reached for a sausage only to have his hand slapped. "Those are for dinner, not your afternoon snack. Go grab an apple if you're hungry," Martha said as she disappeared into the kitchen with the platter of sausages. Floggin and I quietly laughed as we toasted to women. I had done what I promised and pulled out 5 nice-sized, well-smoked roasts out of the smokehouse and tied them to my battle bear and walked it around front to find Martha waiting on the porch with her Sunday hat on. Primping and polishing herself, she said. I yelled for Kylie. The girl is nowhere to be found. "So there are some roasts on the back porch that need to be put in the smokehouse. Will you do that, please, Sergeant?" "Yes, Mum," I answered with a smile. Martha came down the porch stairs and mounted my battle bear while I held the reins. "Good-sized roast. Thank you. How does this thing ride, Sergeant?" she asked. I handed her the reins and said, "He's a little slower than a horse, but much more comfortable." Martha looked him over and said, No, I don't think so. Hee-yow! My battle bear took off like a racehorse, leaving a cloud of dust higher than me as they disappeared down the road. Surprised, I said to myself out loud, "I've got to get her to show me how to do that." Then went and hung the roasts as requested. After which I decided to pop into the kitchen via the back porch to see if she might have forgotten one. The kitchen looked more like a 5-star restaurant at dinner time than an inn. There were pots bubbling on the stove, 3 roasts on skewers above the fireplace, and under that a huge cast iron pot of something that smelled delicious. Smoked sausages hung everywhere. The salting racks were full of dried salted meat. I looked around and said to myself, she could feed an army! But no roasts to be hung, so I exited out via the inn. Floggin had put his fancy navigator's kit away and was rolling up his map when I came through the kitchen door. Not a wise idea, Sergeant, he warned. Our secret. I smiled and walked over to the table. So the women are gone, nothing to do till tomorrow. Fishing? I asked. He nodded and said, I'll meet you out back. Oh, and Sergeant, go around the inn. I hate lying to my wife, he said with his pipe in his mouth. Running out to the stables to grab my fishing gear and looking forward to a nice day of fishing with a friend, I opened the stable door. I was literally punched in the face by a very bad, very pungent odor. Ugh, God, what the hell is that? I said out loud. An odor of fire and rotten meat and wet, dead grass? I've been on battlefields that didn't smell that bad. I looked around the stable to see what it was, and I found it. Floggin had cut out the 6 by 6 foot bottom of the smokehouse tent and framed it with a hard, thick navy rope frame. The blood that dripped from the fresh roasts stained around the letters ARMY and gave off a sweet, pungent smell of death, and the scorched hole where the fire pit was smelled of fire and smoke, and the whole canvas reeked of mold and dead grass, and hung it on the back wall directly over my bed. That son of a bitch got me with my own prank, I said aloud. I should have known something was up when I noticed all the stable window shutters closed. I went to go take it down and put it outside. But that son of a bitch had nailed it to the wall, and the varnish on the frame was still wet and tacky, so now my hands were covered in sticky, smelly varnish. Son of a bitch! I yelled and went to my bucket of water and grabbed the soap to wash my hands. A very sleepy Kylie, who was sleeping with Lil Sergeant in Chili's bed, said, What's going? Ew. Yearn from Lil Sergeant, who ran outside and started wiping his nose in the grass. Your blasted father got me with my own prank. Kylie opens the shutters, please, I said as I scrubbed at my hands. Kylie opened the shutters and then said, I'll wait for you outside. We'll talk there. Oh, Kylie, grab the fishing gear on your way out. We're all going fishing this aft, I said. Oh, okay, yay! Kylie said as she gathered the fishing gear for both of us and left quickly. I guess Floggin was waiting just outside for me because I could hear their conversation as I scrubbed my hands. That was very mean, Daddy. I was in there sleeping. Kylie barked out at her father. Yes, I know. Pumpkin, I saw you curled up with your bear when I was tacking up the new art piece for the sergeant, he said, and I could hear him lighting his pipe while he said it. Oh, you knew. And you still put that smelly thing up? She said, surprised. Well, Pumpkin, you were also there when it was created, were you not? And you're going to be a King's Guard, are you not? You knew this is a Navy family. I very well might have gotten you into the Naval Academy, had you shown any interest, he said, trying very hard to hide a chuckle in his voice. Oh, from Kylie. Oh, okay, is that how it is, Daddy? Till now I've been shaking my finger at the sergeant for being mean to you, but next time I'm helping, and I hope it's very mean indeed. Kylie insisted and stomped off. The other way, Pumpkin. We're going to the pond today, not the river, Floggin yelled. Come, Lil Sergeant, was the last I heard from Kylie. With my hands washed, I marched outside. Ah, Floggin, I love the new art piece. Thank you, I said with a smile. Like it, Sergeant. I call it After the Army Passes. Sorry it took me so long in there. Well, first I wanted to get a good look at your work, but it seemed a bit crooked, and when I went to straighten it, I got varnish all over my hands, so I had to clean up. I said, Clever of you to put it on a slight skew, I said, looking at him and smiling. Is it crooked? I had no idea, and you touched the frame? I may have to touch up the spots, he said with a semi-smile on his face and his pipe in his mouth. Well, Sergeant, shall we go? I want to show you that grove of birch trees, and there's a nice little pound down there to catch greater sagefish. I'm afraid Kylie has absconded with your rod and tackle, Floggin said. That's okay, Floggin. I trust it more in her hands than yours, I said as I laughed and put my hand on his shoulder, and we left. Floggin showed me the grove, and it was back far enough from the road that it wouldn't attract nosy neighbors. And his property line cut through a quarter of it, though we would need most of it to do the fence. We then headed for the pond and found Kylie in a bit better mood. Daddy, Sergeant, I've got 2 already, about 8 pounds each, and I've put your green shiny lure on your rod, Sergeant. She greeted with a smile. Stay out of my tackle box, fish fairy, I said, chuckling. Floggin put on his basket and tied a fly to his rod, then said, I think we should practice the catch and release method, for the most part. Today, if we show up at home with another 80 pounds of meat, Martha will have all our heads. Good idea, Floggin. Our 3 best fish each? I suggested. And Floggin and Kylie agreed. Where's Lil Sergeant? I asked. Oh, he found a shallow spot over there. You can just see his ass sticking out of the water like a duck, but he's doing well. He's gotten 3 that I've seen, Kylie said, then smiled and turned to her father. He's practicing the fish and eat on the spot method, and chuckled as she spoke. We had a great day fishing and telling stories. I caught 1 that kept able. Floggin caught 2, about 10 pounds each, and Kylie didn't catch anything larger than what she had, so she was happy with her too. But it would be Lil Sergeant who showed us all up by catching a good 15-pound greater sagefish, which he pranced by each of us with, before he plopped himself down beside Kylie to eat it. While we fished, Floggin moved away to another spot for a while, and Kylie and I hatched a plot for revenge. I asked Kylie to get her father's pipe as he napped in his chair after supper, as he always did. I need his pipe and an old shot glass. You get it, run it out to the stable, we'll do our prank quick, and then you return it to him without waking him up. It's very important he does not know his pipe ever left his person, I said to Kylie. Okay, from Kylie, smiling. A good day was had by all fishing and returning to the inn. I offered to gut and clean everyone's fish and hang them in the smokehouse if I could find the room. After which I washed up and joined everyone for supper. A wonderful feast of venison sausage, boiled cabbage, and steamed carrots. Martha told us how the vicar was so happy with their donation, and she had a long chat with him telling stories of Chili and I, and how the vicar promised to do a sermon this Sunday on how, if the community wanted prosperity to return, bear hunting was off for the next 3 years, which I was very happy to hear indeed. Martha was informed of Floggin's prank and how Kylie and Lil Sergeant got caught in it, and now how the war was on between father and daughter. I excused myself after dinner to go write a letter to my mother, telling of her second son's new girlfriend, and how he will spend his last days in freedom with a family of his own. Coming around the inn and heading for the stables, Martha was waiting on the back porch for me. Sergeant, a word if I may. She quietly spoke, beckoning me over with a hand gesture. Yes, Martha? I asked. Kylie's bear, Lil Sergeant, is it? She asked. I smiled, knowing she intended a gift of some sort. Lil Sergeant Big Paw, Floggin, I said. Thank you now, just between us, she requested. Of course, Martha, I said, and I ran off to go write my letter. A few hours later, after I had finished my letter, Kylie showed up with her father's pipe and the shot glass. The smell in the stables had died down considerably, so I had the potbelly stove going mostly for fragrance than for warmth. Here, I got it. Daddy is sleeping in his chair, and Mom said she had sewing to do and went upstairs, Kylie said. Okay. Good work, Kylie. You move like a cat, you do, I complimented as I took her father's pipe and the shot glass and opened my drawer and pulled out a folded piece of buckskin. Is this a good shot glass, Kylie? I asked. Oh no, Sergeant. I got it under the sink in the kitchen at the back. It will never be missed, she said. Good, because we are going to have to destroy it after this, I said as I unfolded the buckskin to reveal 2 tiny white mussels. As I set up my prank, I revealed to Kylie the plan. Did you know, Kylie, of all the freshwater fish in Azeroth, the female greater sagefish has the most powerful mating scent gland. Her smell can be smelled underwater for hundreds of miles. Hold your nose, I ordered. As I squeezed the oil from one gland into the shot glass, a powerful smell of rotting dog shit hit the air. From Kylie. I told you to hold your nose, I said. I can still smell it, she replied. These glands are why I offered to clean everyone's fish today. I was hoping we'd have a female, and we had 2, I said as I squeezed the other gland into the shot glass. Then, grabbing Floggin's pipe, I twisted the mouthpiece from the stem with a crack. You broke Daddy's pipe, came out of a very worried Kylie. No, Kylie. This is where the filter goes, I explained as I pulled the pipe apart to reveal the filter. Then, carefully taking out the filter, dipped one end in the oil in the shot glass, pulled it back out, and put the dipped end of the filter back in the pipe facing the mouthpiece, and put the pipe back together. There. Now, Kylie, when your father smokes his pipe, everyone will smell the wonderful green apple tobacco, but all he'll taste is rotting dog shit, I said with a smile. Kylie looked at me shocked with her mouth open and pointed at me. Oh, you're evil, Sergeant. You are so evil. Then her shock turned into a smile, which turned into a laugh. I dropped the mussels into the shot glass and wrapped the whole thing in the buckskin and carefully handed it to Kylie. Here, go throw this in the stove, and for God's sake, don't spill it, I asked. She carefully took the shot glass and stuff over to the potbelly stove, opened the fire door, and tossed it on the fire. I grabbed a clean hanky from my desk and gave Floggin's pipe a good clean on the outside. Here, take this and quietly return it to your father, and don't wake him, I ordered. She gave me a salute and took off running. The 5 or so minutes it took for the smell of burning, rotting dog shit to leave the stables was well worth the prank, I thought, as I poured myself an ale. Kylie came back, poured herself an ale, and sat on the corner of my bed. All done. The string is around Daddy's neck, and the pipe is resting on his belly just as it was. He didn't even flinch, Kylie said with a smile, taking a sip of her ale. Like a cat, I said with a smile and offered my mug for a toast. Offering Kylie a cigar and taking one myself, I said, Now, Kylie, you can't be making comments or hints. Your father is a very smart man, and if you want this thing to work, you have to play it cool, like you have no idea what's going on. Got it? I asked, lighting my cigar. Yes, Sergeant, she said with a smile on her face and a cigar in her mouth. We had a few ales and smoked our cigars and talked about our plans for her mother's garden and what we would do in the morning. And when we finished, Kylie went over to Chili's bed and kissed Lil Sergeant goodnight, who had been sleeping there the whole time, and off to bed she went. The next morning came early with Kylie knocking on my door. Come in, I yelled from my pillow. Yowl hiff? Hiff, Kylie said in a deep voice. Very funny, Kylie, I said as I got out of bed, holding my surprisingly sour back. I guess a week on the hard ground and then a soft bed must have pulled something, I said aloud to myself. Good morning, Sergeant, Kylie said as she smiled in passing. Lil Sergeant, up, she ordered. Come on, we're burning daylight. Here's a small fish to get you out of bed then. You go hunt, understood, she said. Yearn, from Lil Sergeant, and he picked up his fish and headed outside. You better work on your manners, young man. Fine, go eat it outside, she ordered. I missed something? I asked. Oh, he said it still stinks in here. He's going to eat outside, Kylie answered. Doesn't smell that bad. I can hardly smell the art piece, I said. I think he meant you, Sergeant, from our prank last night, Kylie sheepishly said. Oh, right, I said. Thank you, Lil Sergeant, I yelled. Yearn from the bear? I don't want to know, right? I asked Kylie as I pointed outside. Kylie smiled and shook her head. No. Okay, then. That's an angry little bear you have there. Kylie, hot bath water, if you would, I requested. You're not a guest anymore, Sergeant. The pump is outside, she said and pointed out to the pump. Ah, but I'm not allowed in the kitchen, I said with a smile. Fine. 3 hot, 3 cold? She asked. That would be lovely, Kylie, thank you, I said as I poured a mug of ale. After my bath and my ale, Kylie and I headed straight to work on the garden. Floggin had already left early for the town, so Kylie and I marched off the measurements and banged in 3-foot stakes in every corner and the center of each end from the pile behind the stables. After that, we attached the plow to my battle bear, and Kylie rode my bear, keeping him straight while I plowed the field. The plow went through the field like butter, no big rocks or stumps of any kind, and the whole thing went smoothly and quickly. Martha came out a few times with tall pitchers of ice-cold lemonade, but even with the breaks, we managed to get the whole field plowed in less than 3 hours. You could now see how big this garden was going to be. Oh my! That's huge, Sergeant, Martha said when she saw the plowed field. But with the fence and irrigation ditches, it won't look as big and daunting as it does now, Martha, I said. You'll be lucky if you get half that for usable planting area, and we did go oversize when we turned, and to make sure the posts will go in easy. Okay, Sergeant. Still, it'll take me all day to weed and water. Anyway, lunch in half an hour if you'd like, Martha said. Thank you, no, Martha, Kylie and I are going to go cut trees and bring them back here. Not an easy job with a full belly, I said, and smiled. And Kylie and I did just that, and we grabbed a couple of saws, ropes, chains, and what have you, and my battle bear, and headed down to the grove. With the trees, a standard 6 inches round and tall and straight with little branches, Kylie and I made quick work of cutting down more than what we needed. It became a game between Kylie and me who could cut down their tree faster, yelling "done" as each tree fell. When we finally took a break, we counted 11 trees cut down, and since we only came for 8 7-foot posts, we had enough done to pretty much do the whole garden. Laying the chains on the ground and stacking our trees on top of them, then winching them tight, we tied our haul to the battle bear, and Kylie rode while I walked beside the back of the trees to stop tangles, back to the inn. Dropping our pile of trees by the pump, Kylie and I were done, even though it was only mid-afternoon. Kylie went inside to ask if we could get a late lunch, and I hooked up the plow to my battle bear and pulled it over by the side of the stables, putting it on a nice angle so it looked decorative in the tall grass. Just then, Floggin came down the road yelling before he even was close. "Kylie, Martha, come outside. Kylie, Martha," he yelled repeatedly. I jogged to the front of the inn, joined by Lil Sergeant to see what was going on. And there was Floggin coming down the road on a huge loaded buckboard wagon drawn by a Clydesdale horse. Kylie and Martha both came out the front door to greet him. "Martha, we got 600 gold for the skin," he said as he stopped with a huge smile on his face. 600 gold, he repeated. Getting down, he danced with both of them as I clapped. Then he grabbed Martha and said, "Martha, I paid off our taxes on the inn for the next 2 years. Put 300 gold in our bank account. We have a wedding dowry or college fund for Kylie of 50 gold and bought all this and still have gold in my pocket. Come, everyone. There's something for everyone." And he pulled his girls to the back of the wagon. Tied to the back of the wagon were 2 goats, a nanny and a billy. On the back was 4 hens and a rooster all in cages, 2 huge rolls of chain link fence, a roll of chicken wire, tools, pipes for an irrigation ditch, and seed of all kinds, a huge blue horse ball, a few boxes of stuff, and a huge flat something covered with a tarp. "Looks like you got everything for a nice garden and then some," I said. "You don't know the half of it, Sergeant. Oh, and the furrier said he'd give you 1,000 gold for your skin sight unseen." "Sorry, Floggin, it's not for sale, but thank you for thinking of me," I said, with a huge smile. "Everyone wait here, please," Floggin said, and he grabbed the big horse ball off the wagon and waddled over to the side of the inn with it. "Lil Sergeant, ball," and he threw it as hard as he could into the backyard. "Yearn, yearn," from Lil Sergeant as he took off like a shot after the ball. Floggin cupped his hands and yelled, "That's for you if you stay away from my goats and chickens." Kylie and I looked at each other and laughed. "Now, everyone, there's a little something for all of you, but I have to ask my wife something first," he said, hopping up on the wagon. "Martha, dear, I know it's your garden, and you've been dreaming of it for years, but I feel we do owe the good sergeant a debt, so would you mind if we named your garden Chili's Garden?" And he pulled the tarp off the flat object to reveal a beautiful cast-iron garden gate with a huge polar bear in the center of it. "Oh my God, Mr. Floggin, it's beautiful!" Martha yelled at the top of her lungs. "Is that a yes, Martha?" Floggin asked. With her hands over her mouth, she nodded. "That's too much, Floggin. The gate is beautiful, but it's Martha's." Martha stopped me from speaking by putting her hand over my mouth, saying, "We insist, Sergeant," then hugged me. "Martha, everything you asked for is in this box. Why you wanted," Floggin started but was quickly interrupted by Martha. "Thank you, Mr. Floggin. I'll take that," she said as she reached up for the box, then disappeared into the inn with it. "Sergeant, Kylie, on my way home, I ran into a night elf trader who told me 2 members of my family would benefit by owning these. A Sargeron quiver, I think he called them. Each arrow does something different," Floggin said as he pulled out a few arrows and read the side of them. "This one says rope, this one, noise, and this one, flame," he read. "Anyway, 1 set for each of you," he said as he handed each of us the black quivers. "Be careful with that, Kylie. A Sargeron quiver is not a toy. They are a very serious set of arrows, and very expensive and rare too," I warned. "Thank you, Floggin. This is above and beyond," I said with gratitude. "Yes, thank you, Daddy. I love it," Kylie said as she jumped up the side of the wagon and kissed her father. You're welcome, Pumpkin. And you too, Sergeant. He also said something very strange to me, Floggin said. Oh, and what was that, Floggin? I asked. He said, you must be very proud of your daughter to live such a brave and noble life, he said, looking puzzled as he lit his pipe. I knew what Kalsor meant immediately, but again I would keep it to myself. This green apple tobacco of yours, Sergeant, it goes bad quick? Floggin questioned. It smells great to me, Floggin, Kylie? I asked. I think it smells wonderful, Daddy, Kylie said with a smile. Floggin looked puzzled, then took a few more puffs and smelled the bowl of the pipe. Anyway, let's get this wagon around back and unload it. I'm renting it by the hour, Floggin said as he stepped over the seat and into the driver's seat. When we got around back, Lil Sergeant was pushing his ball up the hill that had the smokehouse on top. Then when he reached the top, he'd jump on the ball and roll down the hill with it. That looks like fun, Kylie said as she pointed at Lil Sergeant. And we both laughed. Martha came out onto the back porch and started barking orders like a drill instructor. Kylie, throw some hay in the shed and put the chickens and rooster in there at the back out of the sun. Then tie the goats to the pump and give them a bucket of water. The tall grass there should keep them busy. Sergeant, the wire fences, tools, and hardware go up here on the porch. Mr. Floggin, stop fiddling with your pipe and get that seed in the kitchen out of the sun. Now people move, she ordered. Well, in minutes the wagon was unloaded, except for the gate and Kylie, and I took aside each and carefully got it off the wagon and started heading over to the back porch to lean it up against the railing with Martha right behind us, like a proud mother hen. Easy now. Careful. Kylie, lift your side more. Watch that rock. Easy. She would continue this until the gate was safely leaning against the railing. Cupping my hands, I yelled to Floggin as he was driving off slowly. You better bring back 2 bags of cement. Dirt won't hold this heavy gate even, Floggin. He waved as he left. Martha grabbed my arm and pulled me over in front of her new gate. Isn't it beautiful, Sergeant, and such a perfect polar bear, even has Chili's blue eyes, she admired. I paid her tribute by giving her praise in a dwarven accent, for dwarfs rarely say anything good. She be a grand soft gate, and a fine likeness of Chili, too. I know E would be proud, I said as I looked at her. Why, thank you, Sergeant, she said, and then ran into the inn to cry like my mother does when you give her a compliment. Come on, Kylie, our lunch and the garden have to wait. Let's turn this shed into a chicken coop and goat pen. Well, within 2 hours, Kylie and I had that old shed looking like a pretty lush chicken coop and goat pen, with a goat-sized doorway in the side of the shed and a 6-foot by 6-foot railed birch pen, which we anchored the posts 2 feet into the ground using Floggin's new auger, and the same-sized pen for the chickens in the front of the shed, only sectioned off with chicken wire to contain the chickens. Then we went to work on the inside of the shed, cutting a door in the back wall as an entrance and sectioning off the shed into 2 so that neither animal could get into each other's pen, but we could. I tied wire through the door to work as hinges for now, and we tried the animals in their new home. I don't know about you, Kylie, but I think I've just about had it with work for the day, I said. Me too, Kylie said just as her mother came over from admiring her new gate again. Well, that will do fine till Mr. Floggin can build a proper door system and water troughs, Martha said. 2 more hours till supper, and if you 2 are done here, there's more work to do, Martha said as she went back to look at her gate again. I whispered to Kylie. Tell your mother you got to take Lil Sergeant hunting for his dinner. Kylie nodded. Mom, I have to take Lil Sergeant hunting for his dinner. Keep him away from your goats, Kylie yelled over to her mother, and Martha waved her off. I'm going with her, Martha, just to keep an eye out, I said and smiled and waved over. Quick, go get your bow, meet you by the stables in 10 minutes, I said quietly to Kylie as we planned our escape. With 2 hours till dinner, Kylie and I took Lil Sergeant down to the stream. And while he fished for his supper, Kylie and I shared a skin of ale and both had a well-earned cigar and talked about being a King's Guard again. How soon do you think we'll know, Sergeant? Kylie asked. Well, tomorrow's Sunday, so Monday earliest, and the new semester at the academy starts in a few weeks, so if you're getting in this year, it will be within the next week, I said, calmly, not to get her hopes too high. I looked up at the sky and said, Despite my retirement and saying goodbye to Nimicie, it has been a beautiful summer. I said as I put my cigar in my mouth, laid back on the grass, and crossed my arms in front of my chest. All right, Kylie, you can bury me now, I said. Die without your king's seal? She asked jokingly. You're right, I said, and I popped right back up, and we laughed. Are you ever going to tell me about Nimicie, Sergeant? Kylie asked gingerly. Someday, Kylie, someday, I said as I smiled. Well, dinner should be on the table soon, and I don't think your bear has had his fill yet. Would you like to get going and leave him here? I asked. Kylie nodded, then yelled to Lil Sergeant. After you're finished your fishing, go sleep in Chili's bed. His bed, I offered. Kylie put her hand on my arm in thanks. In your bed at the stables, she yelled. Then we set off back home. As we arrived back at the inn, Martha had the picnic tables pushed together in the backyard and set up as a serve-yourself smorgasbord of leftovers, sandwiches, and jugs of lemonade. The seating was cleverly arranged so that everyone would have a good view of her new garden gate. Floggin had long since returned and had carved out a sign for above the gate that said, Chili's Garden, and had it near the gate set flat on sawhorses with the varnish drying. Seeing us, Martha yelled over, Go wash up, then come help yourselves. I invited Kylie to wash up in the stables with me to save time, as we were both very hungry. Serving myself for dinner, Martha came up behind me. Sergeant, did you see the handsome sign Mr. Floggin made for the garden? Yes, I did, Martha. Beautiful, I said and continued. Floggin, did you get the cement? We better have that gate up first thing tomorrow. Otherwise, I don't think we'll be eating again till it is. I said, chuckling. You're a very wise man, Sergeant, Martha said with a smile. I did, Sergeant, but tomorrow's Sunday church first, then work, he said as he ate. Will you be joining us, Sergeant? Martha asked hopefully. Martha, I grew up half human and half dwarf, and I made my decision a very long time ago to respect the old gods and the new, but to stay out of both their houses. But thank you, I said. I'm staying home with the sergeant too, Mom, Kylie said as she filled her plate. Kylie, Martha said surprised. Well, Mom, I can go to church or I can stay home and work on your garden with the sergeant. You choose. The Lord will miss you, sweetie, Martha said as she filled her plate. I could not hold back a chuckle. Most of the conversation over supper was about how handsome Martha's gate and sign were. Kylie and I did our best to put a nice dent in the leftovers since we hadn't eaten all day. And Floggin, though he had opened a new can of tobacco, was still fiddling with his pipe. There is definitely something wrong with this pipe. The whole thing tastes like dog shit. Smells fine to me, dear, Martha said as she ate. Your mind playing games on you, Floggin? I asked. Would you like a cigar instead? No, Floggin said angrily. Kylie, laughing, looked at me and asked, Should I let him off the hook, Sergeant? It was your idea. It's up to you, I said, setting Kylie up to take the fall. Kylie got up to put her plate on her chair and marched over to her father and knelt down beside him. Daddy, do you believe I'm going to get into the academy? I really do, Pumpkin, Floggin said. And that is partially why you let me sleep through your prank on the sergeant as well. Isn't it, Daddy? I guess so, Floggin admitted. Well, Army, got you back. I stole your pipe, went out to see the sergeant and got the sex glands from the greater sagefish from the fish he cleaned for us, squeezed the oil into a shot glass, opened your pipe and dipped your filter in it, put it back together, thanked the sergeant for his help, and returned your pipe to you while you slept in your chair, she said. Now standing with her hands on her hips. Go, Army, Kylie stated and marched back to her chair, grabbed her plate, and sat. I never said a word. I was proud to see Kylie take the prank for herself and stand up to her father. Floggin cracked open his pipe and took out the filter and smelled it. Making a horrible face, he threw the filter in the fire and got up to go clean his pipe. As he passed Kylie, he said, A man's pipe, Kylie, and stormed off. Kylie, go apologize to your father, Martha ordered. I will not. He started this, Mom. He could have woke me before he pulled his prank, but he didn't. So I'm sorry, Mom, but no. Kylie stood firm and returned to eating her supper. Martha turned to me, shaking her spoon at me. You started all this? I expect you to finish it now, she ordered. I'll try, I said, chuckling. May I have permission to go into your kitchen? If it puts an end to all this, go, she said, returning to her meal. I got up smiling at Kylie and nodding to tell her she'd done well, and walked into the kitchen where Floggin was cleaning his pipe with soap and water at the sink. I grabbed a big jar of vinegar off the shelf and went over and leaned against the counter next to him, put the jar in front of him, and said, "You'll never get it clean with soap and water, Floggin. Let it soak in a glass of vinegar for about 10 minutes, then wash it," I said, chuckling. "A man's pipe, Sergeant," he said in disbelief. "She's as smart as her old man, Floggin," I complimented. Smarter, I think," he said as he cracked a smile. "Anyway, we're upsetting Martha, so truce?" I asked and stuck out my hand. Floggin took my hand and said, "I still think you had a lot more to do with this than Kylie. But okay, truce?" "I swear to you, Floggin, I may have told her about the sagefish, but the rest was all her," I said, then thinking to myself, I reminded myself of one of my rules. Never tell an enemy the complete truth. "Well, I'm going back out for another bowl of stew and a sandwich or two. I'll see you out there," I asked as I left. "After my pipe is done, yes," he said, smiling. I went out and grabbed my food and told Martha that Floggin and I had struck an accord and the war between him and I was over at least. She was pleased to hear it and returned the conversation to her gate. With Floggin smoking his pipe again and Kylie falling asleep in her plate, I excused myself for the evening, thanked Martha for the wonderful outdoor supper, and headed off to the stables. Looking the stables over before entering, the windows were open, so I trod carefully inside and looked over everything before I got comfortable at my desk. Lil Sergeant was sleeping on his bed and had somehow brought in his ball and had it in the corner. I remember thinking how small he looked compared to Chili, but how much like Chili he really was. I double-checked the soap and towels and tasted the water in the washing bucket, opened the drawer on my desk and footlocker and felt my bed for lumps and shook out my pillow. Okay, all was safe. I poured myself an ale and lit a cigar and relaxed for the evening. Just then a knock and Floggin came in with 2 boxes of cigars. "Sorry, Sergeant, they were on the bottom of the last box," he said as he put them on my desk along with 30 silver. The store clerk said at 35 silver each, he will gladly carry one a week. I think he's planning his retirement on your cigars and my tobacco. Floggin chuckled. "Thank you, Floggin, and we do have to treat ourselves, don't we?" I chuckled. "Ale, Floggin?" I asked and grabbed a mug for him. "Thank you, no, Sergeant. Sits a little too heavy on my tummy this late at night." He then looked at my art above my bed. "You know, Sergeant, I just may have to rename that piece a thick, strong naval rope supporting an indestructible army. I think I'll call it Joint Forces," he said, admiring the piece. "I like that, Floggin. I like that very much," I said, and held up my glass to him. "Do you thank you, Sergeant? Well, then I'll carve a plaque," he said and continued. "I came not only to drop off your order, but to thank you, Sergeant, for all you've done around here. And since you nearly worked my little girl to death today, I got to do something I haven't done in years. I got to carry my little girl to bed and tuck her in. A joy I hope someday you yourself will experience with your own daughter. You're still a young man, Sergeant, and there is still lots of time," he said as he looked at me puffing his pipe. I smiled and said, "Thank you, Floggin. That means a lot. So, Sergeant, you were saying you need a few more foxtails, which got me thinking too. Deerskins, a huge bear pelt, and 5 or 6 foxtails. A coat of some sort. You may want to ask Martha for her help. She is an excellent seamstress," he said. "And I happen to know a field that is usually overrun with foxes. After the work is done, perhaps a day of fox hunting, Sergeant?" Floggin asked. "I would love that, Floggin, thank you," I said. "And you are right, it is a coat, or will be, but it is intended as a winter festival present for your wife. I would not ask her to sew her own coat," I chuckled. "Very generous, Sergeant, but I would urge you to reconsider. A lady of size, especially an older lady of size, can be very particular about who knows their dress size. Besides, if you do it my way, you may get a pair of fur-lined gloves or a new fur-lined quiver out of the scraps for yourself, Sergeant," he said and smiled while puffing his pipe. "You're very wise, Floggin. I never thought it might embarrass Martha. I will do it your way after I have enough foxtails, thank you." "Oh, I owed you, Sergeant, despite the pranks. I love the pipe," he said as he smiled and left. Left alone in the stables, I leaned back in my chair with a deep exhale. The day had been long. Work, laughter, pranks, and promises. And yet I felt strangely content. The smell of the cigar drifted through the rafters, mixing with the faint scent of varnish that still clung to the prank above my bed. I glanced over at Lil Sergeant, curled tight with his ball as though it were a treasure. He gave a small grunt in his sleep, and I thought again of Chile and of Nimicie. My heart pulled in two directions, toward what I had lost and toward this small, bustling family that had pulled me into their lives. The inn was quiet now. The chatter from the supper tables had died, and Martha's proud voice praising her new gate was but a memory. Outside, the frogs at the pond had started their night song, and the last coals in the kitchen fire dimmed. I took one last sip of ale, let the warmth roll down my throat, and wrote a few more lines in my letter home. Words about the day, about Kylie's fire, about Martha's stubborn joy, and about Floggen, who, for all his pranks and bluster, had begun to feel like a brother. When I finished, I sealed the letter carefully and set it aside to be sent at first light. Then I checked the windows again, making sure no trick was waiting in the shadows. I smiled to myself, shaking my head. Floggen had nearly bested me with his art piece, but the war was not over. Not yet. There would be another round, and Kylie would be ready to fight it with me. I laid back on my bed, boots still on, listening to the soft creak of the rafters. The stables felt safe now, despite the stench still faint in the air. My eyelids grew heavy, and my thoughts drifted to the garden, to the cast-iron gate gleaming under the lanterns, to the promise of tomorrow's work. Chili's garden, I whispered. It was a fine name. As I drifted toward sleep, I thought of my mother, of the letter she would soon hold in her hands. She would smile at the mention of Kylie, laugh at the battle of pranks, and maybe even cry at the thought of me finding a home, even if only for a little while. And perhaps she would understand, as I was beginning to, that family is not always bound by blood, but by the bonds forged in work, in laughter, and in trust. Leal Sargent gave another grunt in his sleep, rolling over with his paws tucked under his chin. I let the sound settle me like a lullaby. Tomorrow, there would be more work. Posts to sink, fences to stretch, irrigation ditches to dig. But for tonight, there was only rest. And so ended the day of gardens, pranks, and bonds in the quiet of the stables, under the watchful eyes of both Chili's memory and Lil Sargent's dreams. The war of pranks might continue, but the roots of something deeper had been planted. A garden, yes, but also a family, a future, and perhaps even a measure of peace. Chapter number 20, bugled in. I awoke the next morning to Kylie shaking me. Sergeant, wake up. I thought we might get Mom's gate up before they go off to church. The sun is not up yet, but the sky is light enough for us to see, Kylie said just above a whisper. I sat up in bed, and Kylie handed me an ale. Thank you, Kylie, I mumbled and gulped it down. Then got up, splashed some water on my face, and got dressed, and we were off. We went and grabbed the two nicest, straightest trees from the pile. I let Kylie pick them out, since she is the self-proclaimed expert. With the picnic tables and sawhorses for support, putting the gate structure together was easy work. We cut the trees to 12-foot lengths, attached the gate 3.5 feet above the end of the poles, put a permanent cross piece of log under the gate, and temporary ones over it to hold the width, all the same, all the way to the top where we nailed in the sign. With the entrance built and very strong and sturdy, we mixed the cement and dug the holes with the agar and a cross trench for the gate support. Dropped a little cement in each, and dropped the gate in perfectly. I held the gate perfectly vertical while Kylie shoveled the cement into and around each post and packed it down, then a little cement on each side of the support trench. And then we stood on either side of the entrance, holding the poles perfectly vertical for the next 2 hours as the cement dried. Martha came out first with a platter of bare bacon and hand-fed the two of us back and forth as we held the entrance with both hands, and telling us how beautiful it was and how wonderful a job we did. Then Floggen with builder's plums in hand to make sure the gate was indeed straight and tested the gate opening it and closing it a few times. The gate is perfect. The two of you did an excellent job, Floggen complimented. It does look a bit odd standing out here in the middle of nowhere, though. What's next, Sergeant? Floggen asked. Fence posts and the chain fence, then the irrigation system dug, placed, and covered, and the rest is up to Martha, I said with a smile. So, today then? He asked, and we both laughed. The gate was up and the cement dry, and I started knocking out the above temporary supports while Kylie went inside to pour us 2 Ellas. Kylie came running out of the back door and ran up to me, grabbing my arm and pulling me, saying, Sergeant, there's a royal coach coming down the road. I think it's coming here. We ran through the inn and out the front just in time to see two King's Guards getting down from the coach. Stevens. Roberts. I joyously yelled, glad to see my friends. They turned and saw me. Attention, from Stevens, as they both came to attention and threw me a salute. I ran down the steps and returned the salute and said, Relax, boys. I'm retired. How the hell are you guys? We greeted each other and told a few jokes on how old and ugly everyone was getting. Then I introduced Kylie, who was smiling ear to ear. Gentlemen, may I introduce Miss Kylie Floggin? Kylie. This is Sergeant Stephen Stevens and Corporal. It is still Corporal? I questioned. Up for Sergeant next month, Sarge, Roberts said with a smile. I nodded. Corporal Robert Roberts, I said. These two misfits have been paired together since basic training, I said to Kylie. Very pleased to meet you both, Kylie said, smiling, and shook both their hands. Oh my, such beautiful uniforms. Kylie said, admiring the King's Guard dress uniform both Stevens and Roberts were wearing. Come on in and have an ale, boys. We'll talk over a few cold ones, I said, putting my arms around everyone and heading into the inn. With everyone at the bar, Kylie ran around behind to pour ales for everyone. So not that I'm not glad to see you ugly dog faces, but why are you guys here? I asked with a smile. Stevens, gulping down his mug of ale, pointed at Kylie. Kylie jumped over the counter and hugged each of us, saying, Yay! I'm in! I'm in! I'm in! Calm down, we don't know that yet, Kylie, I ordered. Stevens put down his mug, smiled, opened his message pouch, and handed me an official scroll rolled on wooden scroll rollers with gold tassels. I took it and walked to the center of the inn and opened it and read it to myself, keeping my back to Kylie while she tried to dart around me to read it. I closed the scroll, held it behind my back, and stood very straight and tall. Kylie, front and center! I barked. Kylie came and stood in front of me, bouncing with excitement, and her hands clutched together under her chin. I waited a moment to let her calm down. I hate to tell you this, Kylie, but you're in! I said with a smile. Kylie exploded with enthusiasm, jumping around the inn and squealing. We'll just help ourselves to another ale while you make an ass out of yourself, Kylie, I said, and went and poured 3 more ales. Here, Sergeant. This is for you from His Majesty, Stevens said as he handed me a letter. Roberts put down his mug and slid it to me. You should have been there, Sarge. The king got your letter and kicked everyone out of court and ordered a jug of wine. For nearly an hour, nobody knew what the hell was going on, Roberts said. A rumor of war started, and all the guards who could ran for the bunkhouse and started packing. It was a freaking madhouse. He chuckled. Stevens continued the story. Then the king yelled for Valdor, and he ran in, and when we all heard them laughing, every guard in the palace looked depressed as the order to stand down went down the line, he said. His Majesty and Valdor walked out of the court, past all the staff and dignitaries, and disappeared into His Majesty's private den, ordering more wine, Stevens said as he drank his ale. Your letter disrupted the entire court for a complete day. There's a lot of people pissed at you, Sarge, Stevens said, chuckling. Good. Shake those stuffed shirts up, I said, sliding Roberts another ale. Kylie, are you finished making an ass of yourself? Would you join your brothers in an ale? I asked. My brothers? Eek! From Kylie. Nope, she's not done yet, I said, and we all laughed. Then Stevens finished his story. The king called both of us into his den, handed me the scroll, and instructed me to read it in front of the entire Floggin family once we got here, then gave me the letter for you and told me to ask you to read it to everyone, he said. I will when everyone's here, Stevens, I interrupted. Then Roberts, doing his best impression of the king, stepped away from the bar, put one hand behind his back, and waving a finger with his other, said, I'm sending you 2 bumbling idiots to pick up Sergeant Zart's ward because for some reason you seem to be the sergeant's favorite misfits, and should you screw up in any way, the sergeant himself will gut the 2 of you like fish, and that, gentleman, I should very much like to see myself, he said, and then laughed. I looked at them with a serious face and said, His Majesty is not lying. I would. They both stopped laughing and looked at me with fear. Relax, boys, I'm joking, I said, chuckling. The camaraderie and fellowship continued for a while. Kylie finally calmed down and joined us, and we told a few stories. Then I got a wonderful idea. Guys, there's 3 of us. Let's bugle Kylie in, I requested. Stevens looked at me and said, Anything for you, Sarge. I smiled and put my hand on his shoulder. Roberts? I asked. I don't know, Sarge. If she says no, it's our lives, Roberts said worriedly. Look at her, Rob. Do you think she'd say no? I asked. Rob looked over at Kylie, grinning and bouncing. Okay, Sarge, for you, Roberts replied. Good, okay, Steve. Do you have an extra uniform I could borrow? I asked. Stephen laughed and said, You're huge, Sarge. You'll rip it. I will not, I said, mildly offended. Wait, Sarge. Can you wear Steve's uniform? You're a master sergeant, and he's only a sergeant, Roberts asked. Yes, Rob. You can wear a uniform of lesser rank if you choose. It's only if you wear a higher rank you lose your head, I said. What do you say, Steve? I asked. You rip it, you fix it, Stevens warned. Kylie's mom is the best seamstress in the land, I said. Okay, Sarge, from Stevens. Guys, what's bugled in? Kylie asked. Kylie, it's a high honor amongst His Majesty's Royal Guard, usually saved for diplomats and royalty and fourth-generation family Kingsguards, a ceremony in which 3 or more guards force the king's hand in accepting whom they have chosen to be a brother or sister. Basically, by doing this ceremony, we are saying to the king, accept this person into the guard, or we will renounce our vows. And if you renounce your vows as a king's guard, you have to kill yourself, I explained. We are also saying, we think you're worthy of being our sister, Stephen said. Oh, thank you, guys. I will never forget this, Kylie said. We all laughed. We got about 45 minutes till your parents said they'd be home. Kylie, do you have a nice dress? Preferably blue, I asked. No need, Sarge. We have a cadet uniform in the coach for her, Rob said. I'll go get it, and Stephen's extra one too. Would you also pull the coach around back too, Rob? We want to surprise Mr. and Mrs. Floggen. Roberts gave me a salute and off he went. Roberts came back and we went and got dressed while Stevens and Roberts practiced their parade routines. After getting dressed and putting on my fancy armor and short sword for the show, I ran up and knocked on Kylie's door. She opened it and we were both taken aback on how well the other looked. Oh, Sergeant, you look scary. Well, I'm a drill instructor, dear. I'm supposed to, I said, chuckling. But you, Kylie, look like that uniform was made for you. I'm very proud of you. Thank you, Sergeant, and look my own tanto, she said as she pulled her knife. Yes, well, put it back and keep it sharp, I said as I fussed over her uniform, straightening it and pulling it taut. Sergeant, how come the cadet uniforms are plain and green and yours are fancy and blue? Kylie asked. Because we're wearing parade uniforms and you're wearing your everyday uniform. You'll get a few when you get to the academy, I explained. Okay, ready? I asked. Kylie nodded, and we went to the top of the stairs. I called up Roberts and Stevens, and we went over our routine. With about 5 minutes till the Floggins returned, we all ran up the stairs and got ready. I tucked the scroll under my arm and stood at the top of the stairs, Kylie behind me, and both Roberts and Stevens behind Kylie, each with one hand on Kylie's shoulders, and we waited. Floggin came rushing in with Martha right behind him, both yelling for Kylie. Kylie, a royal coach past the church. Guy ordered, Kingsguard! The response, forward, march. And we all came down the stairs very loudly in formation. How dare you yell in my inn? Martha started, but was quickly hushed by Floggin as he put his arm around her and held her hand, and with a tear in his eye he said, Quiet, Martha. She's being bugled in. It's a very high honor. Just watch, he said as he stood proudly holding his wife. Martha, seeing the tear in her husband's eye, stood quietly and proudly beside him. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, I ordered, To the right, march. Each of us took a sharp right turn at the bottom of the stairs, and we continued to the front door, both Stevens and Roberts with their hands still on Kylie's shoulders, where I ordered, Parade, halt. I did a stomp and a quarter turn facing the Floggins and front desk. Right, dress, I ordered. Roberts and Kylie did a sharp turn to their right, facing the Floggins. Stephen quickly went behind them, turned sharply right, and at arm's length placed his right hand on Kylie's shoulder. I left them standing there for half a second before the next order, for it made a powerful statement, with both King's guards with their hands on Kylie's shoulders and Kylie in her cadet uniform in the middle. Staying where I was by the door and at full attention, I ordered, Forward! March! In perfect formation, they marched to within 2.5 feet from the Floggins, at which point I ordered, Parade, halt! Martha tried to say something to Kylie, but Floggin gave her a squeeze to stop her. About, face, and all three turned on a dime facing me. Parade, left, shuffle. Roberts, Kylie, and Stevens moved right foot over left in perfect formation with their hands still on Kylie's shoulders till I had them line up perfectly with Kylie's parents directly behind Kylie. Parade, halt. I stomped, took a quarter turn to my left, stomped, marched 3 steps, stomped, took a quarter turn to my right, stomped, and marched forward till about 3 feet in front of Kylie, stomped, and begun. Guard! I said a bit softer but still very loud. Stevens and Roberts both took my lead and lowered their voices a bit as well. Kingsguard! They returned. Attention! I ordered all three came to attention. Stevens and Roberts dropped their hands from Kylie's shoulders and moved half a step each closer to Kylie. Proudly, I yelled. Is there one here to be inducted into the proud, the brotherhood of all brotherhoods, His Royal Majesty's Guard? Both King's Guards. Sergeant, yes, Sergeant! Very well then, I said loudly. Guard, I yelled. King's Guard! Roberts and Stevens returned. Choose, I yelled. In a flash, both Roberts and Stevens pulled their swords turned and crossed them an inch over Kylie's head. Kylie didn't so much as flinch. Martha let out a bit of a scream, but stopped herself. Then we started the bugle and speech. I joined the boys in reciting it because it takes a minimum of 3 guards to be official. On my honor as a royal guard, I request an induction of Kylie Floggen into His Royal Majesty's Guard. I will teach her, train her, live and die beside her, and stand beside her in heaven, guarding our king. For she is from this day forward my sister. On my honor, this I swear. I waited 2 seconds then. Attention, I yelled, and Stevens and Roberts didn't move. They held their positions with their swords crossed over Kylie's head. An act of rebellion to honor me and Kylie. Even Floggen gave a gasp. I tried to keep a straight face, but I'm sure you could see I was glowing with pride. I marched up to Kylie. From this point on, the first words and the last words out of your mouth is Sergeant. Do I make myself clear? I ordered. Sergeant. Yes, Sergeant. From Kylie. I nodded, did an about face, marched back to my spot, and did an about face again, facing everyone. I then pulled the scroll out from under my arm and started reading it. By request of His Royal Majesty Anduin Rin, on this day, in the year of our Lord, Kylie Floggen has been accepted to His Royal Majesty's Guard and to the Officers' Training Academy for which it stands as a ward of Sergeant Donald Jonathan Zart, His Royal Majesty's Guard. Should she accept this high honor, she will here and now take the oath of His Royal Majesty's Guard and become Cadet Kylie Floggen and be enrolled in the next available semester in His Royal Majesty's Guard Academy. Should she fail to complete the academy, she will return to His Royal Majesty's Guard with whatever rank she has achieved. I read loudly. I closed the scroll and looked at Kylie and barked, Kylie Floggen. Yes, Sergeant, Kylie yelled. Do you accept this high honor to join His Royal Majesty's Guard? I spoke loudly with pride. Sergeant, yes, Sergeant, she returned even prouder. Very well then, repeat after me, I ordered. As I read the oath, Kylie repeated loudly and clearly every word and with such pride that it made all us guards stand just a wee bit taller and straighter, while her words rang out reminding us who we are and what we stand for. I believe the whole inn swelled with pride that day. After completing the oath, I closed the scroll and pulled a pen from behind my armor and marched forward to between Stevens and Kylie. Holding the scroll against my left arm and a pen in my right hand, I barked, Mr. Floggen, will you witness your daughter's induction? You're damn straight I will, he said with pride as he held out his hand for the scroll and pen. I handed it to him, trying to hide a smile. He took his time reading it and looking it over, admiring the whole majesty of it all before he signed it and handed it back to me. I then took a step back, turned to my right, marched 2 steps, turned to my left, and took a step between Kylie and Roberts. I barked, Mrs. Floggen, will you witness your daughter's induction? With tears rolling down her face and in a voice that almost broke my heart, she said, I'm losing my baby. As she slowly put her hand out for the scroll, I handed her the scroll and the pen, and she signed it and handed it back. I tucked my pen under my armor and returned to my original spot. I yelled, Guard! Both Roberts and Stevens returned. King's Guard! I quickly marched over to Kylie and put my face in her face. Cadet Floggen, are you, or are you not a King's Guard? I yelled. Sergeant, yes, Sergeant, she yelled back. Then you will sound off like one, I ordered. Sergeant! Yes, Sergeant! I stepped back, took a dignified tug at my armor, and said, Very well then, let us resume. And I returned to my spot. Guard! I yelled. King's Guard! Returned by all three, Kylie being the loudest. Holding up the scroll facing everyone so they could see it, I yelled, Witness! All three yelled back, So witnessed. I closed the scroll, then put it back under my arm. Attention! I ordered. Stevens and Roberts returned their swords to their sheaths, and stood straight and proud beside Kylie. Congratulations, cadet. You are now a King's Guard, I said. Dismissed! I yelled. After all the congratulating was done and eyes were dry, I grabbed Stevens and Roberts and brought them over to the Floggins. Floggin Martha, I'd like you to meet two of my best men, Sergeant Steve Stevens and Corporal Robert Roberts, I said with a smile. Floggin shook both their hands, and Martha punched them both hard in the shoulder and said, That's for scaring an old lady. Then put her hands on her hips and gave the nod. Floggin and I laughed our asses off while the boys rubbed their shoulders. Kylie, your mom hits hard, Robert said. I grabbed Kylie and put her between the boys and put my arms around all of them and said, Martha, if you have lunch and work clothes to trade, I'd bet me and my men here could bang out your garden by the end of the day, I said while the boys quietly groaned. Mr. Floggin, you take these boys upstairs and get them some clothes. Kylie, you go get changed out of that beautiful uniform. Sergeant, you too. I'll put out another smorgasbord lunch with lemonade and later a couple of kegs of dwarven ale. Mr. Floggin, push the picnic tables together and start the fire. Let's go, people, move, Martha ordered. And everyone scrambled. I went to run out the front, and Martha grabbed me and pushed me toward the kitchen, meaning I could now use the back entrance. With Martha right behind me, I opened the back door just in time to see one of the carriage horses taking a dump on Martha's back lawn. What the hell is that? Get it off my lawn, Martha yelled. Yes, Mum, I said, and jumped up on the carriage and drove it around the front of the inn. I then came back around and grabbing the garden shovel, I went to go clean the droppings. Martha came out with her arms full of napkins and plates and a tablecloth and pitchers of lemonade. What are you doing? Go get changed first. Then put that in the garden, please, Sergeant, she said as she set up the tables that were still pushed together from this morning. After everyone was changed, we broke up into two teams, me and Kylie, and Stevens and Roberts. Then, to be fair, we flipped a coin to see who would get the fence and who would get the irrigation. Kylie and I won the toss and took the fence, and we all decided we'd work for an hour, then break for lunch, because Martha was still filling the tables with food, and no one wanted to miss anything. While the boys dug the ditches, Floggin would stand by them with a length of pipe and smoke his pipe till they were done, and he'd drop the irrigation pipe into the ditch and connect them. Kylie and I had a good system going too. I'd dig the hole with the auger, and she'd cut the post from the tree on the sawhorses, then drop it in, and hold it while I shoveled in the dirt and packed it tight. She'd hold it perfectly vertical, then we'd roll the chain link fencing from the last pole to the next, and you nail it into the post. Martha called everyone to lunch and went around making sure everyone had water and lemonade and full plates. Martha was happier than I'd ever seen. Her garden was getting done, and her table was full of boys enjoying her food. She went and stood behind Floggin and kissed his cheek. Oh, Robert, you can fit a few more sausages on that plate, Stephen. Give us your bowl, love. I'll get you more stew while you eat your sandwiches. From Martha. Kylie and I were laughing and thoroughly enjoying watching Martha buzz around. Just then, a tug on my sleeve, I turned to see a whole gang of kids. Mister, can we see your bear? The father said you had a huge white bear today at the church. Oh, I'm sorry, son. My bear is in the mountains with his girlfriend, but Kylie's got a bear too. Maybe she'll go find him for you. I looked at Kylie, and she nodded. Mom, Kylie yelled, more guests for lunch. And she left. Martha came and scooped up all the children and gave them all plates and lemonade. About 10 minutes later, Kylie came back with Lil Sergeant and his huge blue ball. Lil Sergeant had 2 pairs of thick, heavy wool socks stretched over his front paws like boots. Those are my socks, from an annoyed Floggin. Do you want him to scratch a kid, Daddy? Kylie said, giving her father a stern look. Okay, kids? Over here. They all went running. Line up. This is Lil Sergeant Big Paw. He is a wild bear, but he is friendly. One at a time, come to say hi, let him smell your hand, then pet him once, and go sit down over there, 'cause we're going to play a game. The kids did as Kylie instructed, and Leal Sargent was good as gold, and you could tell he just loved the attention. Kylie broke up the kids and Leal Sargent into two teams, the smaller kids and the bear and the larger kids, and called her mom over. Okay, everyone, if the Pillage Land Peewees get the ball to the stables, they get the point. If the Pillage Land Powerhouses get the ball to the Grove, they get the point. Mom, you're the ref, Kylie said, and threw the ball high in the air and got out of the way and came back to finish her lunch. Did I hear you right? Sarge, Chili got a girlfriend? Rob asked. Yup, a huge, beautiful black mountain grizzly, I said. Kylie interrupted. Her name is Set Ty, and she is beautiful, Rob, but don't worry, the guard still has a bear. I'm taking Leal Sargent with me to the academy. Stephen chimed in over his stew. If he pukes or poops in the carriage, you're cleaning it up. You got that, cadet? Sergeant, yes, Sergeant, from Kylie. We finished our lunch and got back to work. Floggin had gone inside and found a whistle for Martha to use, and would yell out the score of the game as we worked. Lemonade breaks were had by all during the day, and by the time the garden was half done, the score was 2-1 for the Peewees. By the time the garden was 3/4 done, the score was 3-2 for the Powerhouses. And by the time the garden was just about finished, the game was called due to having to go home for supper, ending in a tie 3-3. While we worked, Floggin and Steam up with the idea to run the irrigation to the weeping bed for the pump, and Floggin insisted Stephen show it to Martha and called everyone over to listen while Lil Sargent continued to play with his ball by himself. I was just hammering in the last of the nails and ran over to join everyone at the pump. Stephen started to speak. Well, Mrs. Floggin, and was interrupted by Martha. Martha, please, Stephen. Steve smiled. Well, Martha, we ran your irrigation to the weeping bed for the pump. So to water your garden, just pump the handle 20 or 30 times, depending on the weather, and let the water run into the ground. Boom, your garden is watered, Steve said with a smile. Martha grabbed him and kissed him, then hugged all of us, and we all looked at Chili's garden arm in arm. Well, boys, since I was a ref all afternoon, it will be a bit before dinner. Thick bear steaks and fried potatoes for everyone? Stevens and Roberts both said, Yes, please, almost in unison, and I suggested cigars and ale while we wait. Cigars on you, Sergeant, but the drinks are on me. Like Floggin offered, and everyone headed into the inn as I grabbed a box of cigars from the stables and followed. Inside the inn, the air was thick with the smells of cooking potatoes and seared meat. Martha was already bustling around the kitchen, her voice carrying out into the common room as she ordered Floggin to fetch more wood for the stove and Kylie to set the long tables. Stevens and Roberts sat across from each other, still ribbing one another about who dug straighter ditches and who got more mud on their boots. I passed out cigars, and the smoke soon curled lazily upward, mingling with the scent of bear steaks. Kylie plopped down beside me, her cheeks flushed from the day's work and the excitement of her induction. Sergeant, she said, puffing proudly on her cigar, do you think the academy will be as much work as this garden? I chuckled. Cadet, if the academy were run by your mother, half of you wouldn't survive the first week. That got a round of laughter from the boys, and even Martha leaned out from the kitchen with a grin. Dinner was served at last. Platters of thick-cut bear steaks, fried potatoes crisp golden, and pitchers of frothy ale and lemonade. The table was loud with clinking mugs, chatter, and laughter. Martha's eyes sparkled as she watched her family, and now her extended family of guards, tucking into her food with gusto. Every so often she would slip away to check the garden through the back windows, her pride as radiant as her smile. As the meal wound down, Roberts leaned back in his chair, patting his stomach. Best damn meal I've had since winter quarters, he declared. Stevens nodded in agreement, raising his mug to Martha, who blushed and swatted at him with a dish towel. Kylie, still buzzing with pride, asked her new brothers endless questions about guard life, from barracks pranks to parade drills. They answered with stories, embellishing here and there, keeping her laughing and wide-eyed. Later, when the plates were cleared and the last of the ale drained, Floggin pulled out his pipe. He examined it carefully, perhaps remembering the prank, and muttered, Let's see if this one still tastes like dog shit. The whole table erupted in laughter, Kylie nearly choking on her drink. I leaned back, puffing my cigar, satisfied that the day had ended on such high spirits. Martha clapped her hands and announced, All right, you lot, but tonight you'll all sleep under my roof. And no arguments. She began ushering everyone toward their rooms, shoving spare blankets and pillows into the soldiers' arms. The men groaned good naturedly, too full and too tired to argue. Kylie hugged Leal Sargent tightly before sending him to curl up by the stove in the stable, his ball tucked under one paw. I lingered a little longer by the back door, smoking the last of my cigar, watching the moonlight spill over the new garden gate. The iron polar bear gleamed faintly in the silvery light, Chili's likeness standing proud as sentinel over the land. For a moment I thought of Nimicie again, her memory ever present, and I whispered, "Another day done." The night air was cool, carrying the scents of earth, smoke, and distant pine. When at last I retired to the stable, the quiet settled in. Lil Sargent snored softly, the smell of Martha's feast still clinging to my clothes. I stretched out on my bedroll, letting fatigue take me. Tomorrow would bring new labors, new laughter, and perhaps more pranks. But tonight, there was only rest, and the warmth of being, for once, among family.